All right. So 13.3a is all about the escalation of the Cold War. All right. Another region that experiences escalation is going to be Southeast Asia, in specific the Indochina area. Indochina refers to three countries associated with France. This is going to be Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. All right. So during the Japanese occupation, this was during World War II. All right. Vietnam used to belong to the French, all right, but during World War II, Japan did occupy Vietnam, right? They took over. Now, during this time, there was a resistance group that formed, the Viet Minh. They emerged and were led by Ho Chi Minh, and they wanted Vietnamese independence, so they fought both the French and the Japanese alike. Now, at the end of the war, right after all of this has happened, after World War II is over, the French kind of assumed that they would regain control of the colony. But once again, the Viet Minh are not okay with that because they still seek the same thing. They still seek Vietnamese independence. All right, so I do want you to answer this question, right? Which side of the struggle do you believe the United States would support and why? And we're about to, we've been involved in a lot of foreign policy and we've been kind of nudging ourselves within, right? Something that we don't mention, but you probably already knew because we did talk about Ho Chi Minh before, is that the Viet Minh are going to want this communist government, all right? So the Viet Minh are successful in overthrowing the French, and they do attempt to set up a communist government, but not everyone in Vietnam, not all regions agree to this communist government. So this does create a divide within Vietnam. All right. One thing I want you to think about as we continue talking about it is, does this sound familiar at all? Does it sound like anything we've talked about before? So, in specific, Southern Vietnam did not want to be ruled from the north. They did not wish to be communists. All right, so we see that divide. And so what the United Nations decides is to split these independent regions into four geopolitical regions. So you have Laos, you have Cambodia, now you have North Vietnam, and you have South Vietnam. Again, does this sound familiar? All right, this was the way they decided to fix this problem. They were going to split it at the 17th parallel, and they had planned for an election 2 years later that was going to help decide between unification of North and South, whether it was going to be a democratic government or a communist government. The election of 1956, well, not nine, was supposed to decide that, but that never happens, right? This is what I just said, but that never happens, all right? And the problem is because they face a new resistance group, right? And this resistance group is going to be unlike anything they've seen before. In South Vietnam, this is the democratic area, South Vietnam, you see a guerrilla group begin to emerge called the Viet Cong, all right? And they want to unify the country under a communist government. So they began to terrorize some places. They have a campaign of terror in the south. And they're going to be targeting villages, chiefs, school teachers, government officials in order to persuade them to unify Vietnam into one communist government. The Viet Cong, unfortunately, we don't get a lot of time to talk about this because we're going to spend most of our time talking about the United States involvement and perspective. But the Viet Cong were a force to be reckoned with. They relied on their knowledge of local terrain and the element of surprise, which often did result in deadly results, right? And a lot of times, they were outnumbered by guns, but they had that to their advantage, their terrain, right? And remember, this is a guerrilla group, all right? This means that it was guerrilla warfare, which it's almost like anything goes, right? So both presidents, President Kennedy and President Johnson, are going to be the ones dealing with this issue in Vietnam. All right. And remember, one of the main things that the United States focus on is containment, right? Because we want to contain communism. We do not want it to spread. And so we are going to do anything in our possibility to stop that from happening. And so in order to do this, we do get ourselves involved. So we are going to support South Vietnam with the training of soldiers. All right. So as we move forward from this action, it begins to mark the involvement of the United States in Vietnam. We begin to get involved. We begin to think it's okay. And that just continues to increase and increase. And this is what is going to draw a lot of things to question about our involvement. So this is what it would look like, right? So it would be the South Vietnam with the United States support versus the Viet Cong, which is in the South, versus North Vietnam. And a lot of times what we're going to see is that Laos is going to support the Viet Cong and North Vietnam. Our involvement as it proceeds also leads to like the Republic of China and the USSR also supporting the North Vietnamese Communist government wanting to spread. All right, so we're not going to talk about this much because you guys are going to look at it on your own. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this, but what you guys do need to know is that we are going to agree to train, right, this military for the sole purpose of communism not taking over South Vietnam, because we believe in containment. And we believe that if Vietnam falls to communism, it's going to lead to further expansion of communism in Asia. Remember this domino theory. If you guys remember that picture of like Laos and other countries falling into communism. All right, so what does happen though, and I will kind of lead you guys to the beginning of this, even though you're going to look at it on your own, is the United States is going to remain in this advisory role. Excuse the bell. They're going to remain in this advisory role where they are just giving South Vietnam advice. They are training them. That is all they are really doing. They're not physically getting involved. However, the United States will assist in a 1963 coup, right, against a coup that North Vietnam perceived that the South Vietnam was weak. They perceived that it was a weak government, but it backfired. And so the chaos of the coup really leads to communist forces being able to have a stronghold over the South. And so remember, as we are being advised and stuff, and after this coup, we see that they do need additional aid. So what we do, the United States will now support units in the Gulf of Tonkin. This is a body of water, so we now support the South Vietnamese Marine and Naval units. And you will see that this major event kind of shifts everything right here. August 1964, North Vietnamese naval vessels are going to be accused of attacking U.S. Navy destroyers, all right, Maddox and Turner Joy. All right, once this happens, LBJ, President Johnson, is going to be forced to respond, right? We know what happens when we get attacked during, while other countries are at war, because we are just not in the right place. And remember, we were sending troops. We were very much there. So some might say sitting ducks. Think about what that term means. Sitting ducks, just sitting there waiting for something to happen. But yeah, so you guys are going to look at this on your own. You're going to be forced to understand what the Gulf of Tonkin resolutions means. That is going to be the resolution. That term means solution, in other words. But But what I do want to conclude is that by the end, right, in conclusion, what happens is the Viet Cong appear strong, and they will be a force to reckon with. They will continue to defeat in large scale the South Vietnamese forces. All right, this we slowly start increasing our involvement in South Vietnam, right? Getting closer and closer. Families aren't gonna be terrified. They're not going to know what's happening. American troops are going to be sent over from an advisory role. We start to be involved in the Navy. We start to then kind of be protected of the military bases. And by 1968, U.S. involvement escalated to 500,000 troops in Vietnam. All right, now people are wondering, like, what is our involvement? What are we going to do? Are we in the war? Are we not? And so this also leads to the Soviet Union and the Republic of China giving North Vietnam military aid. All right. So now what you're going to do is you're going to continue this Google form and read the Gulf of Tonkin resolutions. All right. Read it, answer the following questions, and that is one of the main terms you need to get out of 13.3a.